Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America. It just might be the greatest sports franchise in the history of sports. A place where legends are made, and there's always something to talk about. Get ready to immerse yourself in pinstripes. Start Spreading the News, hosted by Paul Semendinger and E.J. Fagan, a couple of doctors with a prescription for Yankee fever. And now, here's Dr. Paul Semendinger and Dr. E.J. Fagan. Get ready to start spreading the news.
Yes, indeed. And here we are, Dr. Paul Semendinger, along with the great Dr. E.J. Fagan, who will be joining us in just one moment. Quick programming note. You saw in the Roku introduction that there's the wonderful show with Sonia, which is Prim and Proper Sports. That's on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m., and I will be their special guest this week. So I'm looking forward to that. I worked with Sonia a few times on the Mac and Jack show on Saturday mornings. And so it'll be great to be a part of her show this week. Also, a quick note that we are brought to you by Artemisia Publishing. Artemisia, a traditional publisher located here in the good old USA. They have a ton of fantastic books. Of course, as you know, some of those books were written by me, 365.2, From Compton to the Bronx, The Least Among Them, and Scattering the Ashes, which I need to, oh, here it is, and Scattering the Ashes. I thought I had a banner for that one. But here now, it's time for us to have the great E.J. Fagan join us to do a little Yankee talk. EJ, how are you?
Doing pretty great, Paul. It's been a good week. The Yankees made a trade. Spent the week with my in-laws in Imperial, California. Now we're back here in Phoenix.
That's awesome. You are living the life, my friend. So here's what I'd like to do today, Doctor. I'd like to reflect.
Oh, I should mention. Wait a second. I don't know if you know this. We have a new stat.
A new stat.
A new StatCast has released a base running number. Which I'm very excited to look at because the Yankees are not good.
They are terrible. I would assume that they're in one of the bottom 5 teams in baseball when it comes to base running.
We'll take a look. But I don't know if you want to do it. There's more important news that happened in Yankee land.
All right, so we'll put that on the back burner. Here was my ideas for the show. I'm excited about the new stat, though. You're definitely a much more of a stat guy than me. I stick with the basic stuff: WAR, OPS plus. I don't get too much into some of the other stuff, but you do, and you then explain it very well to our audience and to me, which makes it fun to hear. But anyway, I want to hear your perspectives on Max Fried. I want to hear your perspectives on Devin Williams. Last week,
Max Fried happened since we last recorded.
That is correct. It's been a big week. We talked about Ethan Semendinger, my son, who writes for Start Spreading the News, had the idea of the Yankees getting to Kyle Tucker. Everybody's like, no way, he's not getting dealt, but he did get dealt, but to the Cubbies. I wonder what's next. I want to talk about third base and second base. I'd like to talk a little about first base, since Major League Baseball Trade Rumors is talking about that. And as part of that first base discussion, there's a player. I'd love to go through this with you. Hopefully we have time. But there's a player rumored like in a long shot capacity, who might be a Yankee, who could be, if the Yankees get him, my least favorite Yankee of all time. And I'm wondering what players make that list for you. If the Yankees get this guy, I wouldn't even be a Yankee fan anymore. It would just be terrible. But I'm obviously I'm kidding a little bit. But let's start with Max Fried. Tell us your perspectives.
They signed a pitcher for 8 years. They
At
signed the guy who's
31 years old.
They signed the guy who's the ERA leader over the last 4 years, and they paid for it. And I think there's a world where Fried would have gotten like a $34-35 million contract over a shorter period. They gave him a $27 million contract over a longer period to kind of save themselves some money on the luxury tax. I think that like you can ignore the contract for a second. Like Max Fried is like one of the best pitchers in the world, and I think he's going to be great. I think he's better than Garrett Cole. He's your new number one guy.
I was just going to say, is he better than Garrett Cole? That's what I was going to ask.
Cole's had a more recent, better season, right? Fried has had some seasons where he hasn't stayed healthy, some of which are kind of like normal pitcher stuff, some of which are just like weird freak injuries. Like he got hit in the head with a ball, like a comeback ball at one point. He had like a nerve problem in his forearm that wasn't related to an arm injury. He also had an arm injury. And so, you wish Fried would have made 34 starts one of these years, but I'm not too concerned about it. I think, there's like a silver lining. There's like a little fewer, there are fewer miles on his arm than there were when Cole was 31. So that's something. He is a ground ball machine. I think like old school fans will like him just because he has like a nice pitch mix. He's a ground ball guy. He throws a sinker, but he actually throws more four seamers than two seamers. He's got a curveball rather than a slider. He's got like three different kind of slider cutter type pitches. He's got a changeup. Like it's just he can pitch, and it comes through on the field. He's won a World Series. He's pitched well in the postseason. I think when we're not talking about money, I think the Yankees has got the best pitcher available, and that's not going to replace Juan Soto's runs in his offense, but it's about as close as you can get to adding a really good player to make the team better without Juan Soto. And I think when we talk about being able to get two really good players for the price of one Juan Soto, this is what we're talking about.
And maybe that other player is Devin Williams, would you agree that Devin Williams is the premier closer in baseball?
I think he is either the best or second best closer in the world, right? It's him or Emmanuel Clase. Fun fact, both of them had bad postseasons. Because
that's correct. He gave up the big homer to
when you're not Mariano Rivera, the postseason home pitching is insane. Or it's just hard to be a postseason reliever and not occasionally have a big screw up.
Mariano Rivera gave up a big home run to Sandy Alomar Jr. in 1997.
Yeah, he gave up a couple of singles in Game 7 of the 2001 World Series. Yeah, yes, but like a .75 ERA over your postseason career is not common. Devin Williams is incredible. He's fun to watch. Yes. Have you watched any video of Devin Williams since they traded for him?
No.
His changeup, like I had heard of the changeup before they traded for him, but I had never thought about it. He's in the National League. I don't watch a lot of Brewers baseball. It's incredible. I mean, they call it the Airbender, all-time great nickname. And I think it's fun to watch. Like I love watching this guy pitch now. It reminds me of like dominant Mariano Rivera pitching. It's just he has a pitch that just you can't hit. It's a changeup that moves arm side, so moves right-handed toward a right-handed pitcher, but moves like a slider. And so it's like a slider that doesn't get hit for home runs when it goes bad. I mean, it's incredible. I'm excited to watch Devin Williams pitch. It hurts to lose Nestor Cortez. I think it's interesting to lose Caleb Durbin, which we can talk about. But I think the Yankees just unequivocally just got better from that trade. Right, they took a guy who's probably wasn't going to make their starting rotation, and trade for a guy who's the best closer in the world. Right, I mean, there's no qualifiers there. He was injured last year from a back injury. He came back and he had his best ERA ever. Right, like there's no warning signs. There's no reason. No problem there. It's a 1-year deal. They gave up a guy with a 1-year deal for him. There's some other stuff in there. So there's Caleb Durbin. There's like a conditional pick something. I don't really understand how it all works, but a little bit of money that the Yankees sent their way. But who cares, right? Like the Yankees took, what was a weakness, which is the back end of their bullpen. They had Luke Weaver and a bunch of guys who might be fine if they're the 4th or 5th best guy in the bullpen. And they had the best guy in the world. So like, this is great.
Yeah. And when the Yankees lost out on Soto, there was a concern that they were going to just Josh Donaldson all over again, or right. Jacoby Ellsbury all over again.
And they still could.
And they still might,
right.
Sure. Or Kei Igawa. But what's heartening is that the word? What's giving me at least a little bit of hope is the fact that the 2 moves they've made, and they re-signed Jonathan Loaizaga, were moves that make good baseball sense. These were good moves. So they didn't just rebound and do something silly like sign Pete Alonso to 75 years. They haven't made
their big trade yet, right? Like they still have the guys in their prospect pool and maybe even their rotation to trade for a much better a player better than Devin Williams. I like Devin Williams. He's a closer though, right? He's not going to pitch them. He's going to pitch 60 innings and allow 4 fewer runs than Tommy Kahnle, right? Like that's just how the math works. Those are important runs, right? They're high leverage runs, and so you might win 3 or 4 more games. But you're not talking about your first baseman, your left fielder, right? Your third baseman. But they still have time to figure that out. And it didn't cost them much other than a lot of money to Max Fried to get there.
Yes, I agree. So what do you think is next? Is the next move going to be an outfielder? Somebody who
it sure sounds like they're they and the Cubs are just negotiating over money for Bellinger.
I hear it's a $10 million
difference. So that's a settleable difference, right? I mean, I don't know what exactly the trade is. I don't know if the Yankees are giving something up, but it sounds like it's Bellinger. Now, if you listen to, I think, John Heyman, he thinks that they consider Bellinger a first baseman. I think that's a mistake because they need an outfielder. There's a bunch of first basemen out there, right? If they had to, they could go sign Carlos Santana or trade for Nathaniel Lowe, solid but not spectacular options. There's really not a version of that in the outfield. There's Anthony Santander and Teoscar Hernandez, both of which I think would be disasters in Yankee Stadium left field, right? They're bad defenders in right field. And that's it, right? Like Harrison Bader is like the next guy on the list. Like it's pretty bad. Verdugo's out there. Like, it's not a good list. And so there's lots of options at first base. There's not a lot in the outfield. I bet, you can still keep your options open, right? I can imagine that they get Bellinger and they say he's either a first baseman or a left fielder. We're going to go play the market and figure it out. Like that's fine with me. But I think in the end of the day, he's going to play left field if the Yankees get him.
All right. So since we're talking about first base, I teased this at the beginning. You haven't mentioned this player yet, but before we get to him, in your memory, this isn't really fair to these players.
Yankees I don't like?
Yeah. Who have been the guys that like your least favorite Yankees of all time?
I mean, Donaldson's up there.
Yeah. Your least favorite.
I didn't like Josh Donaldson.
Yep.
I think, the Yankees have generally speaking gotten good human beings, right? They've avoided a lot of the bad players. And even when they bring in guys who kind of had a reputation for not being good, they were fine as Yankees. Like Gary Sheffield was fun. Even though he's one of those guys that got kicked off a lot of teams. So, I mean, John Donaldson stands out, and Hicks, I guess, those two just didn't have a good attitude. And really, especially Donaldson. Like I think about, some of the not running out of double kind of stuff when he thought, thinking that's a home run. He started some fights early on that were not really necessary. So yeah, I think I got to go with him. I can't really think of anybody older that really like made me, unhappy. There are guys who didn't play well, right? Like, we can talk about like Carl Pavano or something, but like, I don't think that's not really what you mean, I think.
How about I just lost his name. Oh, the Red Sox guy, the third baseman, Euclid. How about he was one of these guys.
Whatever. It was a weird fit. He was kind of past his prime when they got him.
Yeah,
Whatever.
he was one of those guys. Like I couldn't stand Kevin Euclid. I'm like, no, you can't get Euclid. No, he's one of the arch enemies, and because he's an arch enemy, and I just what are your opinions of Josh Naylor? Is that really a possibility for the
It's a little
Yankees?
annoying. Look, the whole Rock the Baby thing was really dumb, right? Like that was like among the dumbest home run celebrations I've ever seen. And I love Garrett Cole's reaction at the time, which was like, yeah, I think I saw him do something kind of stupid, right? Like he didn't even like get offended. He's just like, that is just not worth even discussing. And the Yankees won that series. Look, on a player level, it makes sense. I think Naylor is one of the few guys who can get on base that we've been talking about. Right. I mean, Bregman's the other guy who can get on base and didn't get on base last season. And so, we could bring in a Walker, we can bring in a Bellinger. These guys are barely average at getting on base. They're power hitters, right? So they can hit 25 home runs, which is nice. But Naylor's a guy you could put up in front of Judge and say, get on base, be your leadoff guy. So I like that.
He hit 31 home runs last year.
He can hit. Like Naylor's a hitter, and he's like 27 years old, so he's going to keep hitting. I don't think I want to sign him to a long-term contract. I don't think he's a long-term fielder. He's a pretty bad first baseman as is.
Yeah, he's been negative WAR every year defensively.
But look, if the Yankees trade for him tomorrow and it wasn't like a massive return, I think we'd all be pretty happy.
No, I don't want him on the Yankees. He would be my least favorite Yankee of all time.
Look, I think you get used to it, right? Like I think
I'm tongue in cheek, but
yeah, well, I think about, for example, Nick Swisher, right? Was a bit of a clown before he came to the Yankees. He was a bit of a clown on the Yankees. And
he's still a clown.
He's a 45-year-old clown, and we all love him for it. So yeah, I think Naylor would be one of those guys who kind of fades into the background as a Yankee in a good way. I don't think Cleveland's trading him. I don't see why they would, because he can hit, and someone's got to hit alongside Jose Ramirez and Stephen Kwan. But if it didn't cost that much, sure, let's do it. Paul, I got to be right back in 1 minute. I'll be right back.
All right. So while EJ takes his break, I'm going to run down some of the other players that MLBTR.com is saying as possibilities for first base. So EJ mentioned him, Nathaniel Lowe. He's on the Rangers. He'd be a trade candidate. But the name that I keep seeing come up is Carlos Santana. Now, a few years ago, when I made my Yankee hopes list, this is probably about 4 or 5 years ago, he was the guy I wanted the Yankees to target. I was like, this is the guy. And then he went out and he didn't even bat 200 that year or something like that. He batted, let's see if I can find, 192. I wanted him in 2002. And he hit 202 for the year. Or maybe it was 2020 and he hit 199 for the year. He really has not been a good offensive player most of these last many years. In 2020, his OPS plus, remember, if it's 100, that's average, was 93. In 2021, it was 81. In 2022, for two teams, it was 100. In 2023, for two teams, it was 101. And last year, it was 108. Boy, oh boy, that's just not the guy I want the Yankees to get. He's 39. He really hasn't been good. Again, I wanted Santana a number of years ago. I think that ship sank or sailed a long, long time ago. EJ, can you convince me that Carlos Santana is the guy? Because I really don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about 3 positions you have to fill, and you're looking at Cody Bellinger for one of those positions, and he's going to cost $27 million. And then you think about a third baseman or a second baseman, right? And unfortunately, Caleb Durbin's not going to be that guy. That he was kind of your cheap plan B, so you can cheap out at that position. You may have to cheap out at one of the positions. And Carlos Santana's coming off a strong season. Even all the numbers you riled off, like the Yankees would have loved that player last year or the year before or the year before that. He would have been the second best hitter on the Yankees in 2023, at least going into the playoffs. Also just won the Gold Glove, is an excellent defender. Also has a reputation as a mentor. I want to take the three positions in totality. If the answer is yes, in order to fit whatever Alex Bregman and Cody Bellinger on this team, I need to get a 1-year deal for Carlos Santana. I'm okay with that, especially if that means that you have money for Guerrero Jr. or someone the year after. You look at his numbers; they're significantly worse than say Christian Walker, but not that much worse. And Walker is going to take a 3+ year deal and a lot of money. And so, I think that he's one of those opportunities where you can just with money, without having to give up any prospects or anything, just fill that position with somebody who you think is going to be good enough. That says he's going to be 39 years old. He's got a lot of miles on him. This is a guy who used to catch. But give me him. If you can't get Nathaniel Lowe from the Rangers, if you can't get Josh Naylor, if you can't get one of the more expensive guys, you can't get Goldschmidt, right? I think Santana is a fine enough backup plan, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's better than some of those guys.
Well, I mean, Goldschmidt's no spring chicken. He's getting up there in age.
No, he's coming off a worse season. Also, Goldschmidt's become kind of not a great defender. And so, I think, if you're going for the pitching and defense team, you usually are okay with not a great defender at first base, but if you can get a great one, that helps. And Santana's a great one.
All right, you do a good job convincing me of stuff. I don't know if you can convince me of Josh Naylor. I know he's got good numbers, but I just don't want him on the Yankees. I hope not. There was a rumor that the Yankees could have had Kyle Tucker, but they balked on giving up George Lombard and Luis Heel in the deal. Was that a mistake?
No, I don't think so. I think look, Tucker's a 1-year guy.
Mm-hmm.
Luis Hill just won Rookie of the Year. He's got 5 years of team control left. Lombard, I think you could imagine giving up in a deal like that. He's, he didn't have great stats last year, but the offseason scouting reports are starting to come out on him pretty positive. The one thing that everybody has said so far is that he looks like, I think I think Baseball America called him the best shortstop in the minor leagues. He's 19 years old. And in fact, he's a young 19. So he was a guy who's one of the youngest players in his draft class. And they said, yeah, it looks like he'll be able to hit okay. That's pretty good. And, if you're the best shortstop in the minor leagues, you don't have to hit all that badly. That said, he hasn't done it on the field, and he's still very young, and there's still a lot of kind of promise. I think he's going to be a top 100 prospect in most lists, it sounds like, but he's, the bottom part of that list. I think he's a guy you could have given up. You could have given up a Schmidt or something like that, but the Astros wanted 5 years of Luis Hill. I'm okay with trading Luis Hill. It's not for a 1-year guy. Mm-hmm. Eventually, those 1-year trades are going to come back to bite you. And
they just did it, right? With Michael King to get Juan Soto. So, I mean,
but King was only had 2 years of team control, right? Mm-hmm. And he was a guy who had been just converted to the bullpen, to the starting.
Not to the rotations, right?
So, I think this was a much more costly ask than what they got for what they traded Soto for. One reason is that he's getting paid a lot less money. Michael Tucker's getting paid $15 million, Soto got paid $30 million. But I think Kyle Tucker will make a great free agent. I'm looking forward to the Yankees pursuing him because I think he fits a lot of their needs. It's interesting that the Cubs were the team that traded for him. I'm glad he's not a Red Sox or a Oriole or something. He's not our problem for a year, and I don't think the Cubs are going to sign him to a $400-something million deal. Tucker would have been nice. He would have been as close to a Soto replacement as it gets, but he would have cost a really good player. And I think if you want to trade Hill, you can do better than Kyle Tucker, right? You can get a guy with 2, 3, 4 years of control. And I think I don't know if they're considering any of those guys, but they might have to make a trade like that in order to fill those spots.
Is Kyle Tucker going to be available as a mid-season trade guy?
I think the Cubs will be in it, right? They won 82-ish games last year. They had some injuries. Kyle Tucker really solves a problem for them. So, they might trade Bellinger, and so that kind of might offset some of their gains from Tucker. But it's a weak division. The Brewers are really not looking great. They're going to be starting Caleb Durbin in second base or shortstop, apparently. They've lost some pitching. Like I think it might take 85 wins to win that division, in which case no one's selling.
Interesting. So did you look at that stat? Were able to the base running thing?
I did. Let me share a screen. All right. So, all right, hold on. Sorry. I have to adjust my settings here so I can share my screen. And all right. So we're going to go over here for a window. We're going to share this over here. All right. Okay. So this is StatCast's new base running metric. I'm going to try to zoom in here a little bit so we can see it. And what it does is it combines stolen bases and taking the extra base when you run. So if you go first to third, you get points. If that move is available to you, if you go first to home, if you go even when you go second to home plate on a single, those all count. And you take all those situations and you say, on average, how many more bases did a team or a player score? Now, I'd like to ask you, I got the top of the list here. It's the Brewers, the Diamondbacks, the Cubs. Where do you think the Yankees rank on total base running value in 2024?
I'm going to say 28th.
They are dead last. Negative 16 runs. That is, they lost nearly 2 wins versus the average team on base running alone. That's bad. That's really bad. If we actually decide to look at some kind of previous years, so since 2021, and we split the years, we're just going to look at one year at a time. What we're going to find here is a lot of Yankees near the bottom. In fact, 2024 was the worst base running year since 2021, according to StatCast. The Yankees were awful. They were awful in 2023. They were awful in 2022. The Yankees have a base running problem. And we can also do this. We can also look at individual players. So we can take a look. All right,
so you can quiz me. I can tell you who's the worst. I can tell you who's
on the Yankees. Who do you think is the best base runner
in 2024?
Yes, we can go to previous years too if you'd like.
No, let's just play 2024, and I'm not looking. Oh, I can't see anyway. That proves you I wasn't looking. How about I give you the top 3 base runners in 2024?
Sure.
My guess is, my guess is either Judge, because I think he is a very good base runner, and I think that's a part of his game people don't look at, or Volpe, and I guess the other guy would be Jazz Chisholm. Those would be my top 3.
All right, let's take a look. I think this includes Chisholm's time with the Marlins as well. Those just with the Yankees. So Volpe is number 1. He is 5 runs better than average. It's almost half a win. It's really good. He's, I think, the 20th best, right around there in Major League Baseball. Some of that's attempts, right? So Volpe was not an on-base guy. And in order to rack up big runs, you got to get on base. And so Volpe was that. But he didn't make a lot of outs. There's also a cool fact about Volpe we're going to look at in a second. But pretty good for Volpe. Chisholm, pretty good. John Birdie was next. And Aaron Judge was average, perfectly average.
John Birdie played 14 innings. I mean, that's silly.
The worst on the team.
Okay, so I'm going to give you. I was going to give you my bottom 3.
I don't know if you saw it. I've covered it.
I did not. I didn't see it anyway. And I would never cheat because I was right on this when I was just guessing. Like, it doesn't prove anything. It's more fun to guess and see if you're right. But I would say my bottom 3, Glaber would obviously be one, Giancarlo Stanton, and Anthony Rizzo. Those would be my 3 worst runners.
Glaber, Giancarlo Stanton, and Juan Soto.
Wow.
Yeah, Soto gave away 3 runs on the bases. Rizzo gave away 2 runs. Verdugo 2 runs. LeMahieu, Grisham 2 runs each. It was an all of the above problem for the team. Other than Volpe, and after they trade for him, Jazz Chisholm, this was an awful base running team all around. A couple of guys were fine, right? Oswaldo was fine. Judge was fine. They were perfectly average. Ben Rice was fine. Austin Wells was fine, but they really lost on those guys.
Does this do a positional
no
handicap or anything like that? Like
no, so there's not like a catcher. Like I think Wells is probably one of the better catchers, is my guess.
As far as running, yes.
As a -1 run. And so, no, it doesn't. But I mean, there's no saving this, right? I mean, the team ranking really tells you a lot. This was a really bad club. Now, there's some other cool stats that we have in here from base running right here. So, for example, we have the opposite, which is prevention, and we can look at team prevention. It's kind of hard to look at player prevention because it's both the pitcher and catcher kind of work together. But if we look at this from the pitcher's perspective, we can find the best and the worst clubs at preventing runs. Now you've already seen they're not in the top 8. I haven't scrolled down anymore.
I'm gonna say the Yankees. Yeah, 23rd.
The Yankees are 9th. They're really good. They were really good at preventing runs on the base paths. They had threw out a lot of guys. I think they threw out the most, in fact, or close to it.
Well, Soto had a lot of assists. There's no doubt about that.
Well, not just Soto, but they a lot of like pickoff plays and stuff they did really well on.
Interesting, because Jose Trevino couldn't throw. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, and Wells doesn't have a great reputation for an arm. I think his pop times are 30%, right? So your concern about Austin Wells was always like, hey, maybe he's a good framer, but he's gonna be bad at running controlling the running game. He was pretty good at controlling the running game. He got most of the playing time last year for the Yankees, and Trevino was okay at it as well, even if he had a noodle arm. What's interesting, if you look at this right here, outs created versus average. So basically, like, how many outs did you create versus the average team? Well, if you have a lot of base runners on, you're going to create a lot of outs. So, for example, the three teams that had the most outs on the bases, who got the most batters out, had really bad net bases prevented. Basically, people were running all over them. The Yankees, right? They were really good at preventing stolen bases and extra run, batters taking the extra run, and they had the outs created above average. That's catchers, that's outfield arms, that's all of it. When we talked a lot about like fundamentals after the postseason, this is one area where I think the Yankees have very strong fundamentals, despite the fact that they have catchers that aren't naturally gifted at it. And so I think it's really cool. I think it's really telling. We have another fun stat here, which I'm going to try and find here. I'm just going to go right here. So when I say Anthony Volpe base runner, what stands out to you? So we've already said he's pretty good, but what about his base running do you think is unique?
Is unique. Interesting. I think I'd actually say I think he should steal more bases than he does. I think he probably has a very good stolen base percentage, that he doesn't get caught a whole lot when he goes. I think he should run more. But if we're gonna look at something that's unique, I have to think of something that's unique. So I'm gonna say he's one of the best at going from first to home on an extra base hit.
I'm going to show you the article that was written here on StatCast. I recommend everybody read this article. It's kind of cool. You'll get the whole leaderboards, who's the best at stealing bases, the best at taking the extra base, that kind of fun stuff. Volpe is the best in baseball, and it's not even close at getting a lead. So Anthony Volpe's lead, let's find Volpe right here. Anthony Volpe's average lead when he's going to attempt a stolen base is 15 feet. And the next best guy is Zach Neto and Michael Garcia. And Francisco Lindor, Jazz Chisholm. They're all at 13 feet. So Volpe gets 2 extra feet, which is incredible when he tries to steal a base. He's fast, but he's not blazing fast. But this is why he's a good base stealer. He's a good base stealer because instead of 60 feet, 6 inches, it's 58 feet, 6 inches. For him, and that's compared to the best.
No. You're 60 feet 6 inches the pitching rubber to home plate.
Oh, sorry, 90 feet. Instead of 90 feet,
yeah.
it's 88 feet. And if you do the math, that's going to add to your sprint speed, right? Effectively, he is a faster player than he is. I think it's pretty cool, right? Volpe's little like hop step thing. I don't know, when he first came up, I think it was criticized as being kind of little league. But the reality is he doesn't get thrown out a lot. He doesn't get picked off much at all. And he's really good at stealing bases. Now, maybe he's not as good at stealing when everybody knows it's coming, right? Maybe he's easier to defend against than other players. Maybe that's why he didn't steal as much. I think he just doesn't get on base. And if he ever is a guy who gets on base, 330, 340, above average on base skills, like I think he could put up some big stolen base numbers because he's just talented that way. And I think it's just kind of cool to see the numbers just show like that's a lead. Like that's like Giancarlo Stanton's bat speed lead. I mean, it is. There's just no one close to him. And we can even do the math on like how much that adds to his sprint speed, and it's probably like half a mile an hour. He runs like Ellie De La Cruz basically.
That's unbelievable, and I didn't even know they measured that. It's amazing the things that they measure. How far back does this stat go? How new? I mean, you say it's brand new, but how?
So they actually have it. This is one of the ones. Unlike the bat speed stuff, they only have it for last year. They have this for the whole Statcast era, so back to 2017, 2016, something like that.
Interesting.
So we can actually go look at some
7 years. Yeah.
So we could look at, for example, the best base runners. In fact, actually, I believe this article already breaks that down. We could go look at the best base runners in the Statcast era. Do you want to get? I think I remember who it is. Do you want to guess who it is? It's a fun one. It's not Jose Altuve. This will be single season.
Best single. Well, I don't know. You said De La Cruz on the Reds. He gets a lot of. But
this player actually was on the Reds, but a long time ago.
Joey Votto.
Billy Hamilton.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah,
right?
yeah. Because he's so fast. Never got on
Billy
base.
Hamilton had 2 seasons, 2016, 2017, which are the 2 best seasons of the Statcast era, followed closely by Ellie De La Cruz last year. So Ellie De La Cruz is that much fun. He's great. He's a really great base stealer. Gets caught a lot, unlike Billy Hamilton, but is still just net really, really good. Corbin Carroll, Shohei Ohtani, Ronald Acuna Jr., all very, very highly ranked. I think it's not a coincidence that a lot of these players are after the rule change. Right? There are certain players that have been able to exploit the new base running rules, and so you see a lot of 2023, 2024
bigger bases. So it's a little shorter distance, and if the pitcher throws over twice, you pretty much have a free pass to go because once he commits to home plate, you're going.
Yeah, and so he doesn't want to throw over, right? And so it's easier to get a bigger lead.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, frankly, if I remember correctly, Ellie De La Cruz gets like really small leads, but he's just that fast. So so cool stat. I recommend everybody check it out. I'm going to be probably writing a Substack about it. The good news is that the Yankees are looking at a lot of guys who are pretty good, guys who will improve their base running and kind of take them from dead last in the league to hopefully a lot better.
That would be the hope. I'm going to throw a name at you, and just I love one of the things I love doing is just getting your gut. Like here's something that I thought of. Yankees need a third baseman.
Yep.
I don't like Jazz Chisholm at third. I know a lot of people do. I'd rather put him in a natural position. That's always my go-to. Put the guy where he's spent most of his career. Granted, there are guys that can do it. I'm not thrilled with it, having a guy who's a displaced second baseman playing third on a team that I want to win the World Series. So I'm trying to find third basemen that are out there that could possibly be had. And Charlie Hayes' son on the Pittsburgh Pirates has always been a guy that intrigues me. I think he won a Gold Glove. I think he had a down year last year, but take a look at him. Cabrian James and what
Cabrian
Hayes. What do you think?
I think he can't hit. Right. I mean, I think he's a really good defender. 2023, his numbers are okay. He's just barely below average. He's a really, really good defender. I think the Yankees need to get some offense out of one of these positions. And let's say Cody Bellinger is the other guy. I just don't think it's enough. I think that they need someone who could hit. And maybe Cabrian Hayes goes back to that 762 OPS player. Maybe he's last year's 573 OPS. And I don't care how good his defense is, you can't make up for that.
Who the Yankees, when they got him, he couldn't hit, and then all of a sudden he hit. Is there
a world where that? I mean, you can pick up a lot of guys who can't hit, and some of them will hit eventually, right? I think Cabrian Hayes is talented. There may be a world where Pittsburgh is just kind of not good at developing players, but he's not a young guy. He's 27. He's going to be 28 years old next year. If he's a last resort, let's say you get a first baseman who can hit, and you get a left fielder who can hit. Maybe if he's a last resort, he doesn't cost very much. He's a great defender, and he's got really killer defensive numbers, and he's still young. But there's a world where he's, again, he hit 233 with a 283 on base, 290 slug last year. Like that's real bad. When we were talking about Juan Soto as a Yankee, then like a move like this makes so much more sense.
Right, because Juan Soto hides a lot of these problems.
Yeah, Juan Soto plus Cabrian Hayes is two pretty good hitters. And then Hayes would continue to contribute on defense. I think that without him, you can't have a guy like that. Like the mission has to be no Josh Donaldsons, no Isaiah Kiner-Falefa's, no Aaron Hicks's, no I'm trying to think who was the left-handed first baseman we had in 2023. None of those guys, right? Like you need no DJ LeMahieu starting full time. Like you need 9 hitters who are all average players, at least. And the second you start relying on, trying to capture magic out of somebody, you risk having one more guy who's not there. And then someone gets injured, and then you have to play Oswaldo Cabrera. All of a sudden it all starts to fall apart again. And sometimes you do that because that's the only way to build a roster when you have a $50 million right fielder and a $40 million center fielder, right? But the Yankees have money. They have the luxury to spread it around. And I'd rather them get a Carlos Santana, right? Somebody who I'm confident is going to be fine, rather than somebody who I think could be pretty good or could be awful.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Let's talk about Bregman.
Yeah.
All right. So if you could get him on a 3-year deal.
Not going to happen, but.
If you could.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. 5-year deal.
If it not the deal he would take, right? He would only take a 5-year deal if it's got a value that's really high, $35 million a year or something.
Do you think somebody's going to pay him this kind of money? I mean, we know that he's not worth it. So do you see a team actually diving into?
He turned down 6 years, 156,
right?
Which is $26 million a year. That's 1 year fewer than the exact contract that Willy Adames got. So he got 7 years, $26 million a year. And I think he wants that contract. He's a better player than Willy Adames, but he's older. And I think in an ideal world, you give him the same number, you'd employ him to the same age as you employ Willy Adames, and you pay him more. You pay him $120 million over 4 years. I just don't think he's going to take the money. So I think the only other option to sign him is to go do the opposite, right? Is to pay him more money overall, but stretch it out so his average annual value is lower. So you pay him $24 million over 7 or 8 years.
No, I don't
which
not
ends
want
up being
him for
more.
That kind of...
I've been torn. I wrote a blog post this week about it. Part of me says that is scary, right? Alex Bregman had a .319 on base percentage this year. he's a guy we talk about as like elite. He's an elite contact hitter, meaning like he squares up the ball and makes contact. He has never been or hasn't been in a very long time an elite batting average guy. He just doesn't hit the ball very hard. Kind of reminds you of Verdugo in a lot of ways. He still hits more home runs than Verdugo because he can pull the ball right down the line. He's still up until last year, he was an elite walk taker in addition to being a guy who can put the ball in play a lot. So occasionally he hits a ball down the line, hits 25 home runs, hits a lot of soft contact, a lot of kind of, easy flyouts, and walks a ton. And that added up to a guy who was pretty good. This year, he started off really slow and eventually started hitting the ball more, but stopped walking. He went from being an elite walker to a well below average walker.
How does that happen?
I think that scares me. It really does scare me. Now, if you think that he can get back to the player he had been for a while, then that's fine. He also could just be this could be a sign of decline, right? Maybe he had to cheat. And so he had to swing a little earlier, his chase rate went up. So he had to swing a little more at balls outside the zone. Maybe he's hiding an injury, maybe, whatever, right? Like there's lots of explanations for that. And I would want a really good one if I were signing him to a long-term deal. He thinks he can get the long-term deal. He turned one down. I don't know. Like I think if the Yankees offer him $120 million over 4 years, they won't regret that. Because I think he's even if he's in decline, he solves a lot of their problems. Right? He's a really good defender, just won the Gold Glove. He's probably your second best hitter behind Judge, or after Judge in the Yankee lineup. Plays third base, so you can move Chisholm to another position. He solves a lot of problems, and he's also he's like one of those contracts that could really hurt fast. And hurt for a long time. That's why the lower average annual value might help a little bit. But I think it really just comes down to do the Yankees think that he still has it? Do they think he's Albert Pujols, who signed that big contract after obviously declining, right? He had 2 years before that contract where he was still really good, but was worse than his peak. Miguel Cabrera, he signed an extension, so it was a little bit different, but he started declining and was pretty bad by the end of that contract. If it's a 4-year deal and you get 2 or 3 good years out of him, you're pretty happy. If it's a 7-year deal and you get 2 or 3 good years out of him, you really hurt the team at the back end of it. And you still have Fried under contract and Judge under contract. And all of a sudden it becomes really hard to build a winning baseball team.
I agree. If he has a very good chance to be DJ LeMahieu very soon. I
agree. And I think he's more talented than LeMahieu. I think he's better, just a better player. I think there's an argument that he's got something the Yankees don't have, which is playoff experience and leadership and edge. So I think there's some of that, but I'd be nervous. I was trying, and I was going back and forth writing that post. Do I sign him? Do I not sign him? I think the Yankees might offer him a shorter term, high average annual value deal, like a 4-year deal. And I think pretty much any 4-year deal for him, 4 years, 32 per year or something. And then he can go back on the market. If he's still good, he can make more money. I think that's the contract that a player like him used to get. I think about a lot of players like Michael Brantley who would sign a 3 or 4 year deal at that age. And right now, the supply and demand between baseball teams and players is just a little bit off. And it's at the point where, there's not enough players, free agents out there for the 4 or 5 teams that want to spend a lot of money. That said, at some point, maybe the Mets are done. Maybe the Dodgers are done, right? Maybe there's not another buyer for him. Maybe he can't get that same deal that Houston offered him. And Houston now just got Isaac Paredes to play third base. And is reportedly interested in, I forget who else was on the trade.
Nolan Arenado.
Nolan Arenado, right? Maybe there's a point where I say, Nolan Arenado is a short-term commitment. Maybe I'd rather go out and get him and overpay him a little bit so I don't have to deal with him in a couple of years. Maybe it's Cabron Hayes, right? There's a point where the alternatives become better. The only thing kind of holding me back is if it's not him, there's not another number 2 hitter out there, right? Someone you could bat in front of Judge and say you're good, right? You have the potential to be someone who's like that. But if he's the player he was last year, I don't know if I want to bat him in front of Judge. 319 on base hitter. Guy who's going to, I haven't looked at his ground into double play numbers, but sure seems like a guy who grounds into a lot of double plays. Guy who got a lot of home runs going down the line in Houston, where it's easy to go down the line. One of my nightmares is that he signs in Boston because he feels like a guy who's going to get like 1 billion doubles off the Green Monster. But beyond that, like, you know, I just don't know what I don't know if he's going to get the monster contract he wants. I wouldn't be shocked if he's one of those guys who like doesn't have a job in March and has to take a short-term deal.
Well, if
and
that's
then
the case, then he's the guy.
Offer him the Bellinger contract, right? I mean, the problem is that he's better than Bellinger. And he's got a better track record than Bellinger. He made 7 straight ALCSs and won 2 World Series, right? I mean, like that's part of what you're paying for. And I'm okay paying a little extra for that, but not massive. I'd offer him that same deal the Astros offered him, right? 6 years, you know, $26 million per year. I'd probably do that. It's a hurt that hurts, right? That could hurt real quick. But, you know, it's a low enough average annual value that, you know, maybe you just cross your fingers. But yeah, I don't know. Like, look, if they tell me tomorrow they sign Bregman, like I'm happy. I think he makes the team next year better. And I just think my same reaction to the Soto contract. Like I want my Yankee fan for a long time. I want to be doing this show in 10 years. And I don't want to have like the 2013, 14, 15, 16 Yankees to talk about where they just can't build a winning team because they have too many old beat up players and they keep trying to patch holes with guys like Chase Headley and Chris Carter and all that kind of stuff when they don't really have any other options. You know, one way to fix that is to have a farm system, but they don't have a great farm system right now. And you know, you would need a Wells and Volpe and Dominguez to form like a young core. And I'm not sure that they're that. Maybe Wells, but I think they're good. I think they're fine players. But they're not Bregman, Altuve, right? Maybe Dominguez will be. We don't know.
Let me ask you one last question. And if we need a first baseman, he's not a good defender. What's your best contract you'd offer Pete Alonso?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not a big enough contract to get him. Let me bring up Alonso's numbers. I think Pete Alonso's really overrated. He's a good hitter, but this is a guy who you want to talk about on base. Had a 329 on base last year. Had a 318 on base the year before. He only hit 34 home runs last year, right? He had a 459 slug last year. All of this while being one of the worst defensive first basemen in baseball, while being slow, while being massive, and so might not age very well. He might already be well into his decline. I think home runs are overrated. I think Anthony Santander, same thing. He's a little bit of overrated. So what contract would I offer him? I'd give him a 3-year deal worth $75 million. That's not going to get him. Like the Mets will take him back for that, I think. And that'd be fun, right? Like, you know, Pete Alonso can hit and, you know, 40 home runs behind Aaron Judge. That's a lot of RBIs. But I think he's massively overrated. I think he was like a 2.5 win player last year. Like, he's not that good.
He's not that good. 2.6. And
you can't give him a long-term deal because you got Stanton and you got Judge, right? Judge is going to have to play first base or DH at some point.
He had a 53 homer season, a 40 homer season, a 46 homer season, a 37 homer season.
Look, when your rookie season is 53 home runs, like you get overrated. Like that's what happens. When you show up at the All-Star game, even if you're not really an All-Star, to win the home run derby, like you get a little overrated, and I get it. But I think Pete Alonso. I think if a team shells out $150 million for Pete Alonso, they're going to regret it right away.
I agree. All right, EJ, I think we did it. We're roughly at the top of the hour here. Do you have any last big thoughts?
Well, I think we're getting a move this week somehow, right? They're talking to Bellinger. They're talking to Christian Walker. I think we could see something happen this week, and I'm excited for it.
I am too. EJ, until next week, which would be December 23rd, right about on the eve of Christmas. Let's hope there is something under the tree. Once again, everybody, our show is brought to you by Artemisia Publishing. Go to apbooks.net. They have so many great books, including some by me, that it's well worth your time. Lots of award winners. For EJ Fagan, this is Paul Semendinger saying thank you for watching. Have a great night.